Don't look now, but there's something funny going on over there at the bank, George. I've never really seen one, but that's got all the earmarks of being a run.
That's a clip, of course, from the Christmas time classic, It Is a Wonderful Life. But it's also a time capsule to look back at the Great Depression. Frank Capra released It's a Wonderful Life in 1946. That means he shot it in the early to mid-1940s, just a few years after the end of the Great Depression. He remembered what it looked like, in other words. It had just happened. And that clip was what a lot of it actually looked like to ordinary Americans. That is a bank run, and the Great Depression had a lot of those. A bank run is a self-fulfilling collapse of confidence. People, for whatever reason, maybe a rumor, maybe an actual global financial crisis, become worried that the bank won't have enough money to pay them back. It won't be able to give them their money. And so they run to take it out of the bank. But banks aren't like a giant safe where everyone's money sits. A lot of the money at any given time is loaned out. Here's Jimmy Stewart explaining why his bank couldn't give everyone their money back.
I'll take mine now.
No, but you're thinking of this place all wrong, as if I had the money back in a safe. The money's not here. Well, your money's in Joe's house. That's right next to yours. And in the Kennedy house, and Mrs. Maitland's house, and 100 others.
And so whether the bank run was justified in the first place, the fact of a bank run makes the fears valid. It makes them real. Even if everything at the bank had been just fine, now the bank can't pay everyone back because they never expect everyone to demand their money back all at once. And so the bank collapses. That'd be bad enough, but bank runs trigger other bank runs. They are contagious. People in the next town over hear about the bank collapsing, and they worry that's going to happen to them, too. And so they run to get their money out of the bank, taking down another bank and taking down another and another. The United States used to have a lot of bank runs, but after the Great Depression, we ended them once and for all. FDR created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. The FDIC insures all bank deposits even today. If your bank collapses, the government gives you your money back. And so we don't have bank runs anymore. What's going on in Europe right now is a bank run with a twist. It's a country run. The run began with Greece. They lied about their budget situation. Turned out they were deep into debt. But at the beginning, this didn't scare investors too much. They thought the Eurozone had an FDIC. They thought the European Central Bank or rich countries like Germany would always make sure they got their money back. But they were wrong. So there's a run now on Greece. The run is partly in the financial markets where investors don't want to loan them money, and partly in their actual banks where ordinary Greeks took out 700 million euros on Monday alone. But Greece is tiny, so who cares if it defaults? Well, you have to think back to the terrifying logic of bank runs. If one indebted European country goes down, will the next? And that's the worry. If Greece can fall to a run, what about Portugal, or Ireland, or Spain, or Italy? Today, Paul Krugman wrote in the New York Times, quote, "Suddenly it has become easy to see how the euro, that grand flawed experiment in monetary union without political union, could come apart at the seams. We're not talking about a distant prospect either. Things could fall apart with stunning speed in a matter of months, not years. And the cost, both economic and arguably even more important, political, could be huge." Joining us now is Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize-winning economist and Princeton professor of economics and international affairs, and the author of End This Depression Now, his new book, which I have read, which is fantastic and which you should all read. Thank you for being here, Paul.
Okay. Hi.
So first, because you are smarter than me and you know this issue better than me, are there any corrections or clarifications? Did I horribly mislead the audience about what's going on in Europe?
The one thing I would say is that this is not Jimmy Stewart's bank. The trouble is that there are real problems. That it's not just that there's a crisis of confidence, though that's happening too. It is that Greece is probably fundamentally incapable of paying, and unless there's a change in European policy, so are Spain and Italy. So there is a panic, but it's a panic on top of an underlying problem of bad policies, not so much on the part of the Southern Europeans, the Greeks accepted, but on the part of Europe as a whole. So this isn't just a matter of calming things down. They've got to change things in a much more fundamental way.
What happens to us if the euro falls apart, if Greece has to leave in a disorderly way, and then we see bank runs and country runs, and they're not able to stop them?
Okay, so the first question is, where does it stop? If it's just Greece, then that's bad, but it can be contained. If it spreads, the worry is that this is going to take out Spain, Italy, Portugal, which will happen if the European Central Bank doesn't provide trillions of euros of cash. And if they don't at the same time say, okay, enough with this austerity business, we're going to provide some growth so that you can grow your way out of this. If that doesn't happen, then the whole euro breaks up. Then two things happen. It's going to be bad for the European economy, at least initially. It's going to be a hit to the economy, which is going to hit U.S. exports, which is serious because we do export a lot, but not that much. We only sell about 2% of what we make to Europe, so that's manageable. The question is, does this then spread to where it disrupts financial markets here, too? Does this turn into a super version of the fall of Lehman Brothers? And I think that's not going to happen. I think that the European Central Bank can contain that bit. I think the Federal Reserve can probably contain it here. I wish I was 100% certain of that. I'm talking along here, but the last thing to say is the political consequences. I mean, Europe, the European project, Europe as a place of prosperity, peace, and democracy, that's a crucial part of this world we're living in. If that falls apart, boy, it's going to be an uncomfortable place for the next generation.
One thing that I think has been somewhat confusing to people, you've been talking a lot about how in order to get past this crisis, Germany and the European Central Bank need to become a little bit more comfortable with inflation. I think folks normally think of inflation as always and everywhere bad. So how would inflation help? What would that do?
The most important thing right now is that there was a huge bubble. Not so different, actually, from the bubbles here, but there was a huge bubble in housing and in other things in Southern Europe, which led to their costs and their prices getting out of line. So right now you have Spain is probably 30% too expensive relative to Germany. That needs to come down, but if it comes down through deflation in Spain, that's devastating. That means years of very high unemployment. It also means that the burden of their debt becomes ever worse. If instead a significant part of it takes place not through deflation in Spain, but through inflation in Germany, the Germans won't like it, but that's probably a much more feasible solution. So a higher overall rate of inflation in Europe it's still going to be painful for Spain, it's still going to be painful for Italy, but it turns it from being pain that will kill their economies to pain that might be tolerable. Plus, overall, a lot of debt was taken on. A little bit of inflation reduces the burden of that debt everywhere. This has been the way we've gotten out of a lot of debt problems in the past. So inflation helps there too, and that's the reason why we could use a bit more inflation too. But the Europeans, crucially, they cannot make this adjustment. If the European Central Bank says that overall European inflation is going to be below 2% for the next 5 years, then that's the end of the euro. This thing cannot survive with that low an inflation rate.
Paul Krugman, New York Times columnist and author of End This Depression Now. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.